Have you ever wondered why an electric car has to cost $40,000, $50,000, or even $80,000? Why, after more than a decade of electric vehicle development, from Tesla to BYD, from Toyota to Hyundai, has nobody asked this simple question? Can we build an electric car that is actually good, actually safe, and costs only $7,000? For years, people believed that a high-quality electric vehicle automatically meant an extremely high price tag. It was an unwritten rule that the entire global auto industry seemed to accept without question. Then one day, from a quiet corner of Japan's Kansai region, a company most of the world had never even heard of did something neither Tesla nor Toyota had managed to do. They built that electric car, and they priced it at $7,000. When KG Motors Meebo first appeared on social media through a short video, with no flashy advertising campaign, no celebrity ambassador, and no luxury launch event, the world reacted almost instantly. That video reached 30 million views within 48 hours. Major newsrooms, from Bloomberg and Reuters to NHK, all picked up the story. And giants like Tesla, BYD, and Toyota began asking a question they had never needed to ask before. Wait a second, is this real? So what made this tiny car create such a massive earthquake in the industry? What technical secrets are hiding behind that unbelievable price? And is KG Motors really a true game changer, or just a short-lived wave before the giants come in and crush them? We're going to dig into each of those questions in today's video. Before we begin, if you love deep dives into technology, electric vehicles, and the turning points that are reshaping the future, make sure to subscribe to the channel below so you don't miss what's coming next. Where was the electric vehicle world before Meebo appeared? To understand why the Meebo matters so much, we need to step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture of the global electric vehicle industry in recent years. From around 2018 onward, the electric vehicle market exploded at an incredible speed. Tesla kept pushing the limits of battery technology and software with the Model 3 and the Model Y. China's BYD became a force that could no longer be ignored, taking over a huge share of the Asian market and beginning its push into Europe. Hyundai and Kia also joined the race with popular models like the Ioniq 5 and the EV6. People called it the golden age of electric vehicles, but there was one core problem that all that glamour kept hidden. Electric vehicles were still too expensive for most people in the world. Just look at the real numbers. At the time Meebo was introduced, the average price of a new electric car in the United States was around $55,000. Even the Tesla Model 3, which was positioned as a more mainstream option, still started at around $40,000. Many electric cars in Japan, like the Toyota C+ Pod or the Nissan Sakura, which were considered more affordable choices, still cost between $18,000 and $25,000. So what does that mean? It means billions of people around the world. People living in developing cities across Southeast Asia, South Asia, Africa, or even middle-class families in developed countries were still standing outside the door of the electric vehicle revolution. They heard about a greener future, cleaner air, and lower operating costs. But all of that was locked behind a price wall they simply could not climb over. Market analysts call this the democratization gap of electric vehicles. The technology exists. The will exists. But mass access does not. And for years, nobody found a way to close that gap without sacrificing too much quality or safety. That was the world when KG Motors stepped onto the stage. But to understand why this matters so much, we need to look at the heart of the whole story, the company that created Meebo, and the almost unbelievable road that brought them there. Who is KG Motors, and how was Meebot born? KG Motors is not the kind of name you would find on a list of million-dollar funded startups in Silicon Valley or Shenzhen. They began in a small workshop in Japan's Kansai region, so small it barely had enough room to fit 2 motorcycles. The 2 people behind the company were Genta Sato and Koro Haya, 2 friends from college who both worked as mechanical engineers for a local parts supplier. They had no huge capital, no breakthrough patents, and no connections with the giants of the auto industry. The only thing they had was an idea that sounded almost too simple to be true. Build an electric vehicle that almost anyone could afford. The name KG stands for Kindful Green, meaning kind and green, and that name said everything about their philosophy from the very beginning. The early years were not smooth at all. The company nearly went bankrupt several times. They survived by repairing old electric vehicles and experimenting with recycled parts. But during that difficult period, they learned something that big companies with massive budgets often overlook. Understand what real users actually need, not what the market says they should need in theory. The first turning point came with the KG Glide, an electric scooter priced at half the cost of its competitors. It was compact, durable, practical, and perfectly suited for the narrow streets of Japanese cities. Japanese consumers who value efficiency and practicality welcomed it warmly. The KG Glide gave the company exactly what it needed at the time: money and confidence. From there, they moved one step forward with the People's EV, a mini electric car with the slogan, "High-tech, low price." It had no giant screen, no sunroof, and no self-driving system. But it was quiet, solid, reliable, and so energy efficient that Japanese people jokingly called it the working person's dream. That less but better philosophy became the foundation for Meebo. Meebo was introduced in a way nobody in Tesla or BYD's marketing department would have thought of. A short video posted on Genta Sato's personal X account, a tiny white car quietly glided through a crowded Tokyo street, then slipped neatly into a parking spot only slightly longer than a motorcycle. The caption had just 3 words: Meebot, $7,000 EV. The world was not ready for that. It may sound simple at first, but this small detail is exactly the kind of thing that could change the entire game. The technical secret behind the $7,000 price. This was the question every engineer, investor, and auto executive asked the moment they heard about Meebo. How? How can you build an electric vehicle with decent technology, enough safety to drive on public streets, and a price of only $7,000? The answer does not come from one magical secret. It comes from a chain of smart design decisions, and every single one of those decisions starts with one basic question: what does the user actually need? First, look at the size and materials of the car. Meebot is 2.5 meters long, 1.2 meters wide, and weighs less than 600 kilograms. The body is made from lightweight composite material, which greatly reduces weight while still being able to absorb minor urban impacts. There is no shiny chrome, no panoramic windshield, and no expensive sound system. The interior is so minimal that it only has one seat, a small digital display showing speed and battery level, and a few buttons for the air conditioning and lights. Second, and this is the heart of the entire story, the LFP battery, which stands for lithium iron phosphate. Instead of buying batteries from major suppliers, KG Motors developed its own LFP battery system. This type of battery is about 40% cheaper than the standard lithium-ion batteries used in Tesla or BYD vehicles. And it is not just cheaper. It is also significantly safer, has a much lower risk of catching fire, and lasts about twice as long, with an estimated lifespan of up to 10 years without needing replacement. In the electric vehicle industry, that is a trio of features that is normally very hard to achieve all at once: cheap, safe, and durable. Of course, there are trade-offs. Meebot's driving range is only about 120 to 150 kilometers on a single charge. Its top speed is 80 kilometers per hour. A full charge takes around 4 to 5 hours using a standard household 220-volt outlet. But here's the key point. For most urban users, those limits are not a problem. In Japan, the average daily commute is only about 25 kilometers. Overnight charging is enough. Nobody needs to fly at 120 kilometers per hour through city streets. And if all you need is to go from home to work, then to the supermarket, and back home again, Meebot does all of that perfectly. KG Motors also included a feature that not many cars under $20,000 have: an intelligent battery diagnostic system. When the battery drops below a safe level or needs maintenance, the car automatically sends a notification through a phone app. It sounds simple, but in this price segment, that is rare. Finally, the real-world operating cost of Meebot is almost nothing compared with a gasoline car. There is no engine oil to change and no complicated transmission system. The electric motor is sealed and does not require regular maintenance. Most parts are produced domestically in Japan or imported from Southeast Asia at low cost. Put everything together: compact size, lightweight materials, self-developed LFP batteries, minimalist design, and a tightly controlled supply chain. That is the formula for building a $7,000 electric car that is not a cheap toy, but a genuinely useful mobility tool. But no matter how impressive a technology may be, it means very little if it cannot be produced at scale and survive the real challenges of the market. The challenges KG Motors cannot avoid. It would not be honest to tell only the success story and ignore the real problems KG Motors is facing, because this is exactly where the story becomes much more interesting and complicated. The first and most urgent challenge is the raw material supply chain. LFP batteries, although cheaper than standard lithium-ion batteries, still depend on lithium and iron phosphate, and right now, much of those materials come from China. In a world where global geopolitics are becoming more unstable, depending heavily on a single supply source is a huge risk. If raw material prices rise by 20 to 30%, analysts say Meebo's price could be pushed up to $8,000 or $9,000. That would not be a disaster, but it would break part of the psychological power of the $7,000 price point that KG Motors has turned into a symbol. The second challenge is production capacity. In the first month after launch, KG Motors received more than 12,000 orders, twice its internal plan. That number continued to grow as orders from Thailand, Indonesia, and even Europe started coming in. As of the most recent point, global orders had passed 300,000 units. Meanwhile, their current production capacity is only around 80,000 vehicles per year. That means some customers in Europe have to wait up to 6 months to receive their cars. KG Motors is building satellite assembly plants in Thailand and Vietnam to increase output, but scaling too quickly brings risks of its own. As production grows, maintaining consistent quality standards becomes much harder. In a recent interview, Genta Sato admitted bluntly, "If we grow too fast, we risk becoming a completely different company, and that is not what we want." The third challenge comes from safety regulations. Japan and especially Europe are tightening safety standards for electric vehicles, especially one-seat mini vehicles like Meebot. Requirements for crash testing, battery protection, and active safety systems are becoming stricter. KG Motors is working with multiple engineering labs to prepare its 2026 model with upgraded active safety systems. These costs, while necessary, will cut into their already thin profit margins. And finally, the biggest long-term challenge is competition from the very rivals they have shaken awake. Daihatsu, Suzuki, and Honda have all announced plans to release mini electric vehicles under $10,000 within the next 2 years. These companies have stronger supply chains, wider distribution networks, and far deeper financial resources than KG Motors. This is where the race becomes even more intense, because KG Motors is no longer the only company trying to dominate the future of low-cost electric vehicles. What has Meebot done to Tesla, BYD, and Toyota? The reaction of the three electric vehicle giants to Meebot's arrival was not just concern, it was closer to an industry-wide psychological shock. Let's start with BYD, China's largest electric vehicle company and one of the world's leading battery manufacturers. Just 2 weeks after Meebot launched, BYD called an emergency internal meeting. One company executive publicly admitted to the press that they could not believe a small Japanese company was able to produce a commercial electric vehicle under $10,000 at that level of quality. Soon after, BYD announced plans to develop a low-cost mini electric vehicle line aimed at Southeast Asia, which analysts widely agreed was a direct response to pressure from Meebot. Tesla is an even more interesting story. Elon Musk posted a short line on X, "Interesting. A $7,000 EV from Japan, impressive engineering." That one sentence pushed KG Motors stock up 30% in a week. But more importantly, it had an internal effect. Tesla had already been planning a vehicle priced around $25,000. Meebo's appearance forced the company to rethink the entire cost structure of that project. Investors started asking difficult questions. If a small Japanese startup can build a $7,000 car, why can't Tesla, with billions of dollars in resources, build a car under $20,000? Toyota is the most complicated case, and also the most interesting to analyze. Toyota is a symbol of Japan's auto industry, a name tied to reliability and quality for decades. And yet, In just the first quarter after launch, Meebo outsold both the Toyota C+ Pod and the Nissan Sakura in the mini electric vehicle segment. A senior Toyota executive said on television that KG Motors had reminded them of the true nature of technology. Useful technology is technology that changes people's lives. That was not just polite corporate diplomacy. According to industry observers, it was a sign that Toyota was seriously reconsidering its electric vehicle strategy. Soon after, Toyota launched the Urban Light EV project aimed at the low-cost urban electric vehicle segment. Honda did not stay on the sidelines either. They announced the micro-commuter concept with a similar positioning. Even Daihatsu, which specializes in Japan's small K cars, adjusted its electric vehicle development roadmap. But here's the important thing to understand. In this competition, KG Motors is not competing on speed or features. They're competing on something much harder to copy: trust and symbolic identity. When people buy a Meebo, they are not just buying a car. They are agreeing with a philosophy. Good technology does not have to be expensive, and that creates user loyalty that no marketing budget can simply buy. So in the end, the biggest question still remains. Do Meebo and KG Motors really have enough power to change the future of the entire electric vehicle industry? How the future of electric vehicles is being rewritten. We are living through a moment when the electric vehicle industry is moving in two opposite directions at the same time. On one hand, major companies are pouring money into far future technologies. Next-generation solid-state batteries that can charge in 15 minutes and travel more than 700 kilometers. Level 4 and Level 5 self-driving systems, electric vertical takeoff and landing, flying taxis, and ecosystems that connect cars with smart homes. This is the race of companies worth hundreds of billions of dollars. On the other hand, Meebo and the story of KG Motors have proven that there is a massive market being ignored. Practical users who do not need to drive 500 kilometers per charge, do not need self-driving, do not need a 15-inch screen, and only need a clean, reliable vehicle they can actually afford. So, what does Meebo mean for the future of electric vehicles? First, it has accelerated what economists call the democratization of technology. According to research from the Japan Automobile Research Institute, 70% of Meebo buyers are first-time electric vehicle owners. More importantly, more than half of them belong to the lower middle-income group. That means KG Motors is not taking customers away from Tesla or Toyota. They're creating an entirely new market, one that did not exist before. Second, Meebo has changed the way consumers think about electric vehicles. In the past, electric cars were seen as eco-friendly luxury products for the upper class. Now they're becoming a basic need for ordinary people. This is the psychological market shift that experts in Tokyo call the real green consumer revolution. Third, and maybe most importantly from a geographic point of view, Meebo is opening up huge markets that the global electric vehicle industry has not truly reached yet. India, with 1.4 billion people. Indonesia, with 270 million people. The Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, and all of Southeast Asia, where average income is much lower than in developed countries, but urban mobility demand is extremely high. KG Motors has signed memorandums of understanding with partners in India and Indonesia and is negotiating with major European cities like Paris, Amsterdam, and Berlin, where local governments are actively restricting large vehicles and encouraging compact, environmentally friendly transportation. If Meebo, or products inspired by it, can truly enter those markets, we are talking about tens of millions of new electric vehicles sold every year to consumers who were not included in any major automaker's market forecast before. KG Motors is also thinking beyond a single product. The Mibot Share project is an hourly electric vehicle sharing platform for small cities, where users do not necessarily have to own a car and only pay when they use it through an app. This is the shift from product to service ecosystem, similar to what Uber and Grab did to traditional taxis, but this time for electric vehicles and at a much lower cost. The next generation Mebot, expected to launch in late 2026, promises several impressive upgrades. 70% recycled materials, a driving range increase to 180 kilometers, and a price still under $8,500. At the same time, the 2 to 3 seat MeBot family line, priced from $9,000 to $10,000, is also being developed for young families in Japan and across Asia. One Bloomberg expert wrote that Meebo is not a product. It is a catalyst for the democratization of electric vehicles. And from this point forward, the whole industry will have to ask itself, not, can we make cars more expensive, but can we make cars better while still keeping them cheap enough for everyone to afford? That question, when asked by companies with massive resources like Toyota, Honda, and BYD, could change the auto industry more deeply than any new battery technology or self-driving feature. And behind all of that is still the story of two ordinary engineers from a small workshop in Kansai. People who simply believe that technology should serve everyone, not only those who can afford it. The story of KG Motors and the MeBot is not simply a story about a cheap electric car. It is a story about what happens when someone dares to ask the question the entire industry has been avoiding. Why does good technology have to stay out of reach for most people? Meebo has proven that true innovation does not always have to come from billion-dollar research buildings, teams of thousands of engineers, or famous tech cities. Sometimes it comes from a small workshop, from two friends with a simple but powerful idea, and from the refusal to give up on the belief that everyone deserves to benefit from technological progress. But there is still a lot of uncertainty ahead. Can KG Motors keep the $7,000 price if raw material prices fluctuate? Can they scale production without losing quality and their core philosophy? Will the giants now waking up crush them? Or will they coexist with them in a newly expanded market? No one can answer those questions with certainty right now. But one thing is clear, the race has begun, and the electric vehicle industry will never look at the world the same way again. What do you think? Do MeBot and KG Motors have what it takes to survive and grow through the counterattack from the giants? Or will this David and Goliath story end in a completely different way? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this video made you see the electric vehicle industry from a different angle, hit the like button to support the channel and subscribe so you do not miss the next deep dive.